Good morning and thank you very much for coming in. Are such inquests necessary?
Yes, I think that we have come through a terrible past. And although we've had certain processes like the TRC, much of the victims' continuing trauma, not knowing the search for truth, and even not being able to get access to knowledge about why certain things happened to their loved ones is something that is humane, it is important, and in a democratic dispensation like ours, it's vital that we close the chapter on the past with knowledge and information.
There's still so many questions around the deaths of people like Neil Aggett, hence this inquest. You can hear from his sister Jill there in that clip saying, you know, I last saw him on New Year's Eve. That was on New Year's Eve of 1981, of course, and he died in February 1982. I just want to know, did he kill himself as they claim, or was he killed, and why?
Yes.
And that closure is important for families.
Absolutely, and just the imputation that he took his life, and at the time, the media was clearly a pro-state media. Unlike the media now, I mean, in democracy, the airwaves have been opened. That's why you have channels like this one. But at that time, the narrative was pro-state in all respects. And so the family had to go through this burden for decades, and the things that pushed him to where he was, nobody knows, right? So imputing suicide is something that is quite extraordinary. It's an unnatural event. But under detention, then all sorts of things happen. And and the courts have found, for instance, that in the Ahmed Timol case, he was killed. He was murdered by the police. That's clear. The judgment by Billy Mohle is very clear. And he, in his judgment, talked of other inquests needing to be opened. And that's why the reopening of this inquest.
There's been a lot of delay, though, in this inquest, the reopening of the inquest, and other inquests have not even got off the ground. The NPA has been found not to be active, and there's been calls by former TRC commissioners to the president to investigate why the NPA is not moving as fast as it should on other cases. There's many other questions that are still being asked about many anti-apartheid activists who died in police custody at the time.
Well, look, I think that our leadership generally has been so compromised. The evidence out there, the accusations of who worked for who, the jury's out. So it's not surprising that leadership was not committed to the search for truth, because it could have pointed to some of them in high office. And that's why there's been just the fudging of this issue, because it can show that Sats Cooper was working with Colonel whoever, or Craig Williamson, or whoever. And these are high-ranking people who have achieved high office in those parties and also in government.
Now, you, as an anti-apartheid activist, were also detained and tortured during those dark days in our country. You were in the Black Consciousness Movement. Your leader, Steve Biko, was murdered and killed by police at Port Elizabeth and driven naked in the back of a police vehicle all the way to Pretoria. I mean, should we be calling for more inquests, for more action, irrespective of what people are thinking? I mean, we have had the TRC, and after all, we've proven to be a very forgiving nation.
Yes, but you see, you can't be forgiving on a blank slate. You need to be forgiving for something that you have knowledge of. And Neil Aggett's sister is very clear. They want to know, and they need to know. And, you know, whatever that truth is, it must emerge. But our previous judicial system was a fake system. And they put out news about things which we clearly have seen is untrue. the TRC process and the judgment in the Timol case is clear that there are people responsible. In Biko's case, it's very, very clear from just the existing evidence of what he was subjected to already in Port Elizabeth, that he was already in serious decline. And he suffered serious brain injury. The doctors who certified that he could be taken on the back of a police van, shackled and naked, all the way to Pretoria, are culpable. They're actually culpable as accessories to murder. And they're free.
Now, how else can we get to the truth when there's such delays by compromised leadership, as you say, because evidence gets destroyed, as we've had. When the Neil Aggett inquest started on Monday, the current man who's trying to get the information is not being helped. Home Affairs won't even collaborate with him to find the unabridged certificate of Stephen Whitehead, the young man at the time who tortured Neil Aggett for 70 days at John Foster Square. So even the current democratic state doesn't seem to want to help to get to the truth.
Well, that's a question that we need to ask the Home Affairs Minister and the DG. Why are you protecting these persons when you yourself, Minister Motsoaledi, was a student at that time? He wasn't part of any apparatus of protection. He, as far as I know, is clean. He didn't participate with the apartheid state. So who is he protecting? Why should he protect a Whitehead, whose name, by the way, crops up as a serial torturer in other matters, in other cases? So why protect that person?
That person is dead, by the way.
Yes, of course.
He died in 2019, just after Justice Minister Michael Masuta announced that the Neil Aggett inquest will be reopened.
Sure. And many such persons are dead. And you see, the conclusion is irresistible, that there's protection of people who are around or who have been lionized, but who worked with the Whiteheads.
But then we claim to stand for something as a democratic state, having fought successfully against apartheid and politically freed the country, but we're failing the victims' families. We are failing the national psyche in finding closure to a very horrible and dark past.
Yes. And you see, that is playing out. Your earlier clip on the water situation, the other daily occurrences in this country show that we've got a leadership who actually has lost all compassion, has actually not placed people first. Batupile means very little to some of them, and they're just there holding office. They don't care. And in particular, if they have to cover for a so-called comrade who was turned and worked for the other side, they will do it.
So should we be hopeful about a good outcome in the Neil Aggett's inquest for the family?
I hope so, and I hope that the current prosecutorial authorities' leadership does not play the dirty game that we've been subjected to in the quarter century of our democracy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Seth Cooper, a former black consciousness leader. He himself was detained and tortured not once, not twice, several times during the apartheid era.